Hi, today I have Kimberly Emberg, who is one of 3 candidates vying for 2 seats open on the Kingston Board of Selectmen. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're going to dive right into the questions. All right, question number 1. The 34-article annual warrant to be voted on at town meeting was recently reviewed and voted on at the select board meeting. The operating budget was not included in that discussion, yet many capital expenditures were. What is your view on the overall budget being considered, and where do you put the priorities?
So we met 2 weeks ago and we did not vote on the budget because Finance Committee had yet to vote on a final budget for their recommendation. So they met last week. Unfortunately, they were unable to find a budget number that they also supported. Mm-hmm. Part of that is we have a very large school budget for consideration. There is a 10.3% increase proposed by the schools, so that's a significant increase. Last year we faced a 9% increase on the school budget, so there are some questions about the ability to maintain a sustainable level year over year. So while that 10% increase would be within our levy limit, so we can technically, I guess, afford it as a town, mm-hmm. although I would argue that affordability is maybe in question. Mm-hmm. So it would significantly increase the taxes across the town. So we have a lot of questions that we need to answer. I understand transportation costs are rising, special ed costs are rising. So it's a very complicated issue, and we'll be discussing it in great deal tomorrow evening. The capital request that we discussed in our meeting 2 weeks ago, that is a different funding source. So I think we can look at the budget differently than we look at the capital projects and things.
Okay.
So often those are either funded through prior year's articles,
okay,
or that weren't used. So maybe you asked for $2 million, but you only needed 1.8.
So you have some left over.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or through free cash.
Yep.
Or there's a capital stabilization fund as well.
Okay.
So that's funded through a different source as opposed to the operating budget, which is
right.
Raise and appropriate. So the taxpayers.
Exactly. So given the school committee or the school district increases this year, which is really kind of unprecedented. Can you explain to people who don't follow this why that has increased so much and why it's a no control issue?
Well, so that's the question, right? Is it a no control issue? Okay. So school committee was split on their vote. So there were 3 tiers of cuts that the local school committee considered. The local school committee chose to proceed with 2 levels of those cuts, mm-hmm. cutting the proposed budget by just under $400,000. The Silver Lake Regional School Committee, so we've got Silver Lake Regional, which covers Plimpton, Halifax, and Kingston. Yep. And you also have local school committees for each of those 3 towns. So it's very complicated district. It's very complicated budgeting, made more complicated by we recently learned from DESE that we were calculating special ed.
Just for those who don't know, what does DESE stand for?
Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
And that's a state organization?
Correct.
Okay.
So our preschool should have been under the Silver Lake Regional Agreement, which it is now. So our budget is even more complicated than it would be normally because you can't do an apples to apples comparison. So our school committees have been spending a lot of time, which is why we're kind of right at the 11th hour on the budget, because they've been trying really hard to find a budget that works for not only providing the best education possible for our children, but also not eliminating positions and also continuing with technology. And we have an increasing population in Kingston, so there are a lot of factors that go into this. And again, special ed costs are increasing, transportation costs are increasing, so it's just not sustainable in the long run.
And you don't know yet what you're going to be getting from the state per pupil, do you? Has that been finalized?
I don't know, but it is certainly a question that we can ask tomorrow night in our meeting.
Okay.
So we'll be joined by the Finance Committee and the school committees, members of the Silver Lake School Committee. I asked the chairman to join us. I actually just hung up the phone with her just now trying to figure out some of these questions to answers.
Okay, it's very complicated. Very complicated.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the whole idea that the preschool, which was never under Silver Lake before, should have been under Silver Lake, and therefore you have to take the cost of that on that you didn't expect to take on. Sort
of. So it gets moved, right? So that's part of the reason it gets really confusing.
Yeah.
Is that if you look year over year, the local school budget looks like it has gone down.
Yeah.
But then the Silver Lake budget has gone up a ton.
Right.
So it's a 40% increase on Silver Lake and an 11% decrease on Kingston local schools.
Yeah.
So the total cost of education, we're looking at an increase in Kingston of 10.3%. I've heard 10.8% too, so I look
You're not
forward
sure.
to hearing the exact
So the voters will
percentage.
know before they actually cast their vote what this final budget is and how much of that is for the schools.
Hopefully we will know tomorrow evening what Finance Committee plans to put forth to town meeting for their consideration.
Okay.
Again, the town meeting is May 11th, and that is at the intermediate school.
Okay.
So.
All right. More to follow on that. Did you have any other comments on the budget overall or the budget process?
Probably just that the Budget Advisory Committee met in the fall, and that's members of various boards and committees across town, including administration, and we said we wanted to see a level services budget. So whatever that percentage is, bring us a level services budget, which means we're not making any drastic changes to what the services are that we're providing. Tell us what that looks like. But the Finance Committee chair also asked for a 3% budget. So what does that look like? Give me what a 3% would look like. So what cuts would you have to do to get me to 3%?
Okay.
So the town side, I don't mean to say it's two sides, but schools are kind of one half of the equation and town is the other half. The town side came in at a 4.3% increase for level services, and we also provided a list of potential cuts that we could make to get to 3% should Finance Committee need that.
Okay.
I do hesitate on making cuts on the town side, though, with schools coming in at 10.3 or 10.8%. It's hard for me to say to
justify.
I don't know, a police chief or a fire chief or any of the department heads for that matter. Cut your budget. It's very difficult. So it'll be a challenging conversation tomorrow night.
And it always is. Okay, my next question, let's talk about the senior population. Every town is experiencing a growth in the senior population, and Kingston's obviously no different. Looking back and looking ahead, how effective are the services offered to seniors, and do you have any thoughts on how services could be expanded or improved in the future?
It's been a topic that has come up in recent meetings. So the Director of Elder Affairs in Kingston is proposing that Kingston work toward becoming an age and dementia-friendly community. So that involves first conducting a community survey and seeing what that survey brings forth in terms of the needs, whether that's transportation, housing, and whatnot. That survey itself is a $35,000 ask of free cash.
Just to do the survey?
Correct.
Okay.
Which produces recommendations and a report, and it was presented at our last meeting so that we could see what that would give us.
Let me just ask, if you do become an age and dementia-friendly community, are there funds available through the state because you have that designation?
Yes, that is the way that it was presented to us. Correct. So it does open some doors to potential grant funding and other things. The way that the director described it to us is it's almost like a master plan for the aging population, but also other things too. So handicapped accessible trails, things like that. Transportation, it affects more than just the seniors. We have a very active senior community. We have a lot of programs offered through our senior center. So it's definitely, I mean, I have selectmen office hours at the senior center once a month, so I get to see some of the programs and things going on there. It's really,
Do you get a lot of seniors that participate in those office hours?
I would say maybe a handful each time. So not the same people. Some people have questions about roads. Some people have, maybe they don't know who to go to for different things. I tend to play air traffic control. Like, this person here, talk to this person. So,
give them to the right person to talk to regarding whatever they want to talk about. Now, seniors in all of our towns that we cover here at the local scene obviously have problems with housing. They're on fixed incomes, and the housing prices are crazy. Your taxes go up, everything costs more. Is there any plans? I know you have an accessory dwelling units article. Is how much of that was thought of for the seniors, and talk about what that would mean to seniors if it passed?
I think the planning board was not only thinking about the seniors, but also potentially the next generation. So your kid graduating from college,
the young people,
the in between. So I mean, I don't know about other folks, but I'm in kind of that sandwich where I've got an aging parent, but also children that are maybe going into college and graduating. So we need to be thinking about these other housing options. So the one reservation I have only on that article, and not because I don't support it. I think it's a great initiative. I think we do need it. I think it will help with some of the housing needs in a more, let's say, productive way, as opposed to giant apartment complexes, which I don't think is what Kingston is really looking for right now. These are more, I keep talking about sustainability, but a sustainable option for growth that's sort of more of a natural growth for Kingston.
Yeah.
The problem we have right now is we have a water moratorium, not because we don't want building, but because we are only allowed to take a certain amount of water out of the ground
Okay.
at a time per the DEP. We need to put in another well in order to access more water.
Okay.
So right now, the water commissioners also have an article on this town meeting warrant to, unfortunately, pursue eminent domain. So they've pursued it twice already.
And for anyone who doesn't understand that, can you just explain what that means?
It's essentially taking their land, but buying it for the right price, right?
So if there's land that you have identified that a well would be perfect to be placed on, you don't have to. The person has to sell to the town, basically.
At fair market value.
Right, at fair market value.
So in this case, there was someone who was interested in selling this piece of land to the town. Unfortunately, she was sick and passed away.
Oh.
Her estate is now dealing with
Okay.
the land, and there is, from what I understand, a sibling dispute about when to sell said land. And so the water commissioners now are pursuing eminent domain because we've been trying for 2 years,
Yeah.
and now it's to the point where they've kind of hit a stalemate on the family side.
Okay, so getting back to the seniors and housing, it really is dependent upon being able to get more water.
I think so. So there is discussion about having them tap into existing lines. So if you were already on water and you want to put this accessory dwelling unit on your property, so there's discussion of expanding the line. I don't know where the water commissioners will land on that, so I look forward to hearing more about their perspective.
Okay. And overall, are there more services that you think you should offer to seniors because that population is growing so much, or do you think the town keeps up pretty well?
That's a good question. I would say I am open to hearing everyone's ideas. I think anyone who knows me knows that I've given my phone number out to anybody who asks for it. So anyone can call me with ideas. I think we are very open to pursuing the needs. I don't have any strong feelings of we really have a need for this.
Okay.
But I'm really interested in hearing if people do have ideas that we're not achieving now.
Okay, now this is a little bit hard because it's, what do you consider the biggest challenge, the biggest challenge to the town of Kingston, and what aspect of the municipality do you think is handled really well?
So the biggest challenge, limiting to one, that's interesting. So I've already talked about the school budget, so I don't have to talk about that. And I've already talked about water, so I don't have to talk about that. I think another one of the biggest challenges we face are the unfunded mandates coming from the state, to be honest. So from 40Bs to the MBTA zoning to, what was the third one I was thinking of the other day? Oh, how about emergency shelters? So there are financial implications to the towns on which have hotels that are being used by the state. So whether it come from hotel tax or some implications on the schools. Right. So there are a lot of costs associated with these initiatives that I guess I wish the local municipalities had more input before these laws go into place.
Right, so a mandate is something you have to do. An unfunded mandate is something you have to do, but you have to find a way to pay for it yourself.
Right.
Even though the state is the one that's saying you have to do this.
Right.
Okay, how long has that been going on?
Well, so 40Bs went into place in 1969.
Yeah, 40Bs I know have been going on a long time.
And I know that they've tried to repeal it a couple of times, and
that's affordable housing. Affordable.
Okay, I was going to say we're back to that affordable definition again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think it works to bring reasonable amounts of affordable housing to communities. So unfortunately, 40Bs sidestep local regulations in a way that we as communities lose a lot of control over our zoning and how our communities look and feel in terms of what kinds of buildings and developments we want.
Right.
So we have zoning, but 40B sidesteps that zoning. So
because
that's
by law it can.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a state initiative.
And so the town has to have up to 10% of its housing has to be deemed affordable
in order to
avoid.
Right, to qualify for safe harbor.
Right, and that way.
But they can also tell you that you don't qualify even if you make that 10%. So there's.
Okay.
It's a complicated issue.
Okay.
And it does have a large impact on all of the communities in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I guess with all of these, my main point, I think, is there's no one-size-fits-all solution to things like housing. Cambridge might work for one thing, but Kingston and Cambridge are very different things. Right. So we're all sort of unique individuals as people. We're unique as municipalities as well. So it's just, I wish we had more input before these laws go into place, including the MBTA zoning. So
Talk about that. Now, you do have a MBTA station in Kingston.
We do.
And so what is this zoning law requiring you to do?
So the way that it's now been rolled out with the instructions associated with the law, because the law itself, what was written is very short, but the sort of directive that went along with it was much longer and much more specific.
Okay.
We in Kingston are very lucky because we already had apartments at the mall, which was
That went up
close
recently.
to the train station.
Okay. So those qualify?
They do. We got a waiver. So we, as a town, received a waiver so that we don't have to have all of it in that half mile. We have in that half mile, we have an elementary school, we have a transfer station, we have a highway. So they said, okay, you can have part of these zones outside that half mile.
So you don't have to do more. You don't have to do more building based on the MBTA Communities Act.
Yet.
Okay.
I would say yet. So the state has said you have to zone by right, which means you have to put in zoning, right, that allows multifamily units to be considered, right? So it's zoning by right. They haven't told us that we have to build.
Okay.
Will they? I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe, but they have said so far we don't have to build. We just have to zone.
Okay.
Kingston's lucky because we have, one, we got the waiver, and two, we have a great group of people who have come together, the planner, one of our selectmen, someone from the planning board, someone from the zoning board of appeals, and more people I'm sure I'm forgetting right now in the moment. But they've been working really hard to come up with a plan for Kingston that they think will work.
Okay.
That said, Milton, Rentham, other communities are pushing back and saying this isn't working for us.
Yeah, you see a lot of press on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's interesting from my perspective to watch these communities who, by the way, I completely support their standing up for their communities and saying this isn't going to work for us. This one-size-fits-all approach does not work for us. However, Kingston doesn't have to push back just because it's something that it can fit where they're talking about.
Okay.
For
so
us.
you're kind of lucky in a way.
Very lucky.
Okay. Now, getting back to a statement you said about you wish the state would almost talk to you before they came up with these mandates that are unfunded. What can each individual town do to put yourself in front of the state legislature to say, hey, before you pass this, you got to get our input? In
all fairness, I'm not sure that they knew. And this one in particular, the MBTA, I'm not sure that they knew that this is where it was all going to land.
Who's they?
The legislature. So for our state rep is Kathy Lenatra. So I don't know if they realized how far-reaching this would be. So I guess the ask now is to push back a bit.
So
even now,
ahead.
Even now, push back a bit. So it's already in place. Is there anything we can do now to make it more customizable?
Yeah, down the road. Yep.
Even for this particular act, like, can we go back to the governor? Can we ask for modifications? I mean, laws change all the time, right? Isn't that what they're there for? So, I mean, those state legislators, they're legislators, they're there.
Right. To support help you and to help you.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
To help make laws that work for each community and for the Commonwealth.
Okay. And what do you think Kingston does extremely well?
Oh, Kingston is a unique community, I would say. We are very independent-minded. I had someone ask me the other day if we could become the independent state of Kingston. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure that'll work, but I like where you're thinking. So, I mean, I think Kingston is very, it's just filled with there's just some amazing people. It's a beautiful community. I mean, I didn't grow up down here. I grew up in New Hampshire, but this is where my husband grew up, and I'm honored to be a part of this amazing community of really interesting, really smart, really passionate people. I mean, I think it's just that itself is what sets it apart for me.
That's the plus. Okay, my fourth question is about communication. Communication to and from residents is paramount in any municipality. With a lack of local papers, the time constraints of keeping websites updated, and the often opinion versus facts messaging in social media, how would you improve overall communication between the town and all the residents?
Well, I think we have made huge improvements over the last 4 years. So I joined the board in 2020 in a time that was fairly chaotic. There was a lot going on. And since then, we have reopened Open Forum. I'm one of the people that advocated for having all of the meeting materials that are provided to us as board members available on the website to the public at the same time. I'm not any better than anybody else. I don't deserve a heads up on anything. And I think that the public deserves just as much information as I have.
Okay.
Who am I? I'm not special. Do you know what I mean? Like I am just a human, just like everybody else. So we've improved that. We updated the website so that the meeting materials, as well as the minutes, as well as the agendas, everything's all available.
Yep.
It's searchable. Is it a work in progress? Absolutely. Is there more improvement we could do? Absolutely. But we encourage public participation in our meetings. So it's a funny example. I came here when we first were using Zoom,
Yep.
and there was some hesitation on moving to Zoom regular versus Zoom webinar.
Yep.
So Zoom webinar limits what people can see. So you can't see who else is on the meeting.
Yep.
And I had spoke with you folks saying, that's fine. If they were in my room, in the meeting room, everyone would see who everybody was.
Right.
So why should Zoom be any different? So I think in the last 3 years I've served as chairman. I think I hopefully have set an example of the importance of availability, the importance of, really making yourself available as the representative to the public.
Right.
And I think our board and other boards and committees throughout the town have followed that example of opening up communication, sharing information. We have a public records access now available on the website, so you don't have to go through an email address.
Right. So you're saying that your website is really so much more robust than it was before, and the information is there. So almost everybody knows how to at least find a website. A lot of people aren't on social media.
Or who to contact if they have questions.
Okay.
Yes. We do have a town Facebook page, but I'm not sure how much people are looking at that.
Right.
There's probably 12 Facebook pages for Kingston, so it's hard to find information that way.
Sure.
But hopefully, with time, people know who to go to or how to get it. And like I said before, I tend to direct people. I tend to be air traffic control, and I think with communication, you have to lead by example.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So we're going to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the constituents.
Over the last 4 years, it has been an honor to serve as your representative on the Board of Selectmen. And over the last 3 years, serving as chairman, I have gained so much experience, not only working with you, the residents, also the department heads, the employees, and the public. We have worked very hard to make sure that we try to represent all of the opinions and thoughts within the community, and I hope and would encourage that if you feel like your voice isn't being heard, please come to our meetings and please speak up. We have remained focused on communication and community involvement. We have new people serving on boards and committees and commissions who've never served in any government capacity at all, and I encourage, if you are concerned, if you have questions, please raise your hand. We encourage your involvement and would love to hear from you. I guess in closing, I would just say that should you choose for me to continue to represent you on the board, that it would continue to be an honor, a pleasure, and I hope that we can work collaboratively toward the future, which includes working to find solutions to the ever-increasing school budgets, building a public safety complex that will fit both, hopefully, the fire station as well as the new police station, and looking toward solutions to the housing crisis that Massachusetts faces. I look forward to working with you, and again, please vote on May 18th.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you very much. We wish you the best during the campaign and during the election season.
Thank you.
Thank you. And please do make your voices heard by casting your vote on or before May 18th in the Kingston town election. Thank you and good day.